Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. It's your boy D Black coming back with another Raw review. And remember, always raw and uncut. All right, we start off with Adam Pearce talking to Roman Reigns, telling him that Jacob Fatu shouldn't even be here. He's pretty pissed from what happened last week when Jacob threw him out of the ring and stuff, and he started, and he attacked the officials last week and stuff like that. But Roman's trying to make his case that Jacob should be here because Jacob has to acknowledge him. And then in that question and stuff, he asks Adam Pearce, where's his belt at? Where's his championship belt at? And then he asks another question, that's saying that he asks Adam Pearce who brought Jacob, here, who gave that authority. And then Adam Pearce tells Roman Reigns that he gave it. And then Roman Reigns said that he's going to take care of it and take care of Jacob, you know, um, and that'll be it. So, we got, I guess at the end of the show, we're going to get that segment and stuff. And then after that, here comes Division. Division comes out with Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman's, saying who's not ready now and stuff and everything. And he's, saying that as far as because Braun Breaker did beat, Seth Rollins, at Backlash and stuff. So I guess he's going to hold that up against him and stuff, you know. And then Paul Heyman says that, Seth Rollins isn't even good enough to beat any of the members in Vision and stuff, like that. And then Austin Theory gets on, the mic and stuff. Oh yeah, and then Paul Heyman did say that as long as the Vision is the Vision and stuff, Seth Rollins' name will never come up, in their business again and stuff. And then Austin Theory, gets the mic and he starts talking about, the Street Profits and everything, talking about the Street Profits, you know, um, need the title because Bianca can't, pay their bills anymore and stuff, and the reason I said that because we all know that Bianca's out, on maternity leave and stuff. And then Montez Ford, and Daryl Dawkins come out, so the Street Profits come out, and Montez is saying, yeah, Bianca can't pay the bills, like I said, because she's, on maternity leave. But that doesn't mean that he's not there, and now he's the one that's coming out, and they're looking for the tag team titles and stuff. Then Logan Paul gets on the mic and he starts talking a lot of gibberish and stuff. Then he gets to go and to start talking about, himself and everything. And all of a sudden, Joe Hendry comes out, starts singing that little crazy song of his, Paul, Paul, can we fire Logan Paul and stuff, and that just kills Logan Paul when he sings that song. And then we get the match between the Vision and the Street Profits with Joe Henry. So it's a 6-man tag. All right, so the match goes on and everything and stuff. And as the match gets kind of good, then all of a sudden Seth Rollins comes out and everything. And he takes out Braun Breaker and stuff. And in the midst of all of that, you know, um, everybody's fighting. Angelo Dawkins outside. Joe Henry's outside fighting the other two of Division and stuff like that. And the Seth Rollins, like I said, comes and he takes out Braun Breaker. And then Montez Ford gets Austin Theory, rolls him up and he for the win. And so now that match is over with and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens further down the road with this. I'm sure this match is going to happen. It'll probably be like the Saturday night main event, which is coming up pretty soon. Or could this go to the Clash of Champions? It is for the tag team titles. So we'll see what happens to that further down the road. Then we got the Judgment Day talking, and Liv Moore basically is saying about the Raquel and Roxanne, going to get the tag team belts, the women's tag team title, and then Dom talking about defending the title against the original El Grande Americano and stuff. So we'll get that match later on, in the show, in the segment. Then Penta comes out and he goes to the ring. And then Penta's basically calling out Ethan Page, to come out to the ring and face him and say the things that he was saying, you know, backstage to his face and stuff like that. Then Ethan Page comes out, saying to Penta that, he did pin the Intercontinental Champion last week, even though it was in the tag team match. He did pin Penta and stuff, and that he deserves, a shot at the IC title and stuff. And then Ethan Page was saying how prestige the IC title, is, and it was because it was held by some pretty good, Pat Patterson, Don Morocco, you know, um, and some other wrestlers and stuff like that, that held that title. Um, and then Rusev comes out, you know, and he's telling Ethan Page that, he deserves that title match. He's next in line. And then Ethan Page tells Rusev that he can't even beat the Javon Evans and stuff. And so they have a little squall about that. And then Javon Evans comes out. Actually, Rusev starts saying that, he's, next in line. He wants a title at the IC. He wants to try at the IC title match. And Javon Evans comes out, and tell Rusev, that Ethan, Page is lying. But it does sound good because, you know, he said it does sound good that the fact that Rusev can't beat him and stuff. And then we go and we have the match and stuff. Rusev versus Javon Evans. I mean, the match is, actually it was a pretty decent match. Rusev, being the big guy, you know, um, did have the power up on Javon Evans. So he did have most of the match and everything. So the match ended up pretty good and stuff. But Javon Evans being as clever he is and flying all the way, you know, Lord, the acrobats that he does and stuff is dangerous, but it looks good in the ring. But then he gets an OG cutter on Rusev and he wins the match. And then we get EO and Auska. Auska is, calls out EO and she's, saying her goodbyes. And, Asuka tells her that she was looking for somebody, the person to take her spot, to be that one that holds up everything and stuff. And she said that EO is the one and stuff, She said, even though we may have our fights and stuff like that, we'll always be family, and Asuka, says goodbye and she walks out and leaves. So I guess that's it for Asuka as far as being on WWE. I'm not sure where she's going. She's going to go back to New Japan or whatever the case may be and stuff. But for right now, Asuka's out of there. Then we got Paige and Brie Bella coming to the ring, and then they're actually calling out, Raquel and Roxanne because Raquel and Roxanne, told them to be there on Raw, this week, and they're saying that they're here, and so they come out and everything, and then all of a sudden they get into a brawl, and then Liv Morgan gets involved, and she comes and they brawl, and stuff, and then they just leave Paige and Brie Bella laying in the ring. And then we get a little segment with Roman Reigns and Jimmy Uso, and then Roman telling, Jimmy that if Jacob doesn't, acknowledge him, that he's gonna take him out, that he has to be done and be dealt with and stuff like that. He has to get him back because of the, disrespect and everything, stuff like that. And then we get the match with Io Sky and Ruka. This match was it was a pretty good match. It was actually a decent match. Probably one of the best matches of the evening and stuff, and they went back and forth. So did her thing, and Io Sky, did their thing. I mean, I know they don't have any heat. I don't even know why this match was even made, but it was just a good feeling and stuff. And then Ruka at one point was about ready to do the Soul Snatcher. Io Sky kind of steps back and ducks the Soul Snatcher And then as Soruka misses it, Io Sky rolls her up for the pin and stuff. And then after the match, Io Sky shakes Soruka's hand in the embrace and all that kind of stuff. Then we got backstage Jay and Jimmy. Jay is actually waiting on Jacob, to show up. And Jimmy is more worried about what's going to happen, when Jacob, comes in, how that's going to show, how that's going to be. Then we got Kathy and the Street Profits, talking. She's asking them about, as far as, beating the division, where they look like as far as, as a tag team, facing them for a tag team championship and stuff, which is probably going to happen at, like I said, Saturday night main event. And then Seth Rollins, comes up. Seth asks him, if they want the championship, the tag team titles, that he can help them. And then Montez Ford is like not agreeing with that. You know, Montez, reminds Seth what he said last week about, telling them to stay out of his business, stay out of his way, and stuff like that. And he said that's what he wants, that's what they're going to do. And Daryl Dawkins is kind of agreeing with it, but Montez, said that he doesn't trust Seth Rollins. So that's it as far as that is concerned. And then we get, Io Sky talking to Soruka. She's telling Soruka that, she is, probably one of the futures, in the business and stuff like that. And then Soruka thanks her, and then Becky Lynch comes out and tells her, that tells Soruka that she couldn't even beat Io Sky, and then Becky walks off. And then we got the Obafemi Open Challenge. As he was out there making the challenge, Adam Pierce comes out and tells him that the Obafemi Open Challenge won't be tonight. It's going to be canceled because nobody back there wants to come out, and face Obafemi. So he gets pissed off. He leaves the ring. He goes backstage and stuff, and then those guys are sitting right there in the way. So he grabs Angelo. He grabs Angelo, and then he grabs um, uh, what's his name, Berto, and he just takes him to the ring, and he beats the living tar out of both of them. He just destroys them and stuff, and then walks away, leaves them in the dust. Oh man, it's just so funny. And then Dom is about ready to go out to fight the original El Grande Americano, and as they're walking out and stuff, Finn Balor comes and he attacks JD McDonough. And Dom didn't even do anything to help him. You know, he just kept going to the ring and stuff. But anyway, Dom is, having to fight against the original El Grande Americano for the Mexicano AAA championship. And they kept saying it was a historical thing. I don't know what's historical about it because I don't really care about that match because I have no idea who all those luchadors are and what they, I know what they represent, but yeah. And then, during the match, you're going to get the interference, the original, not the original, but El Grande Americano comes out with Rio and Bravo. They try to get in and interfere into the match and stuff like that. And then the Creed brothers come out and they brawl with Bravo and Rio. Then El Grande Americano tries to do something to the original Americano. The original Grande Americano grabs El Grande Americano, then he gets 619 from Dom, and then Dom gives a frog splash, and Dom pins the original El Grande Americano. Wow. And then we got the segment with Roman Reigns. As far as Jacob Fatu is supposed to come out, to the ring and to acknowledge him. And Jay, as Roman is in the ring talking, Jacob shows up, and then Jay trying to calm Jacob down and everything, walking them through, the backstage and everything like that. And then all of a sudden, Jacob attacks Jay, beats him up and everything. And he goes and he heads out to the ring. And as he's heading out to the ring, Jimmy's coming up, and then all of a sudden Jacob attacks Jimmy and throws him around and stuff. And then Jacob gets into the ring and it's on. The brawl is on, you know. And Roman gets Jacob down a little bit, goes out of the ring, and then he gets a chair, and then he starts beating Jacob. He starts beating the tar out of Jacob with the chair. And then Jacob kind of gets things turned around. That switch kind of went off upstairs and everything. And then Jacob went completely off and destroys Roman Reigns. I mean, he destroys Roman Reigns. Not only did he destroy Roman Reigns, he took out the Usos too. And he's saying, he will never acknowledge Roman Reigns and stuff. But it was crazy because towards the end he was walking away, and then he came and he charged, and he took Roman Reigns and the Usos through the barricade and left them laying. It was crazy, crazy and stuff. But we'll see what happens with this, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Roman and Jacob, to come. So with that, the show was pretty. I say it was okay. I'm going to give it. Out of 10, I'll give it like maybe a 4. Because it was mid and stuff. There's some things that could have gone a little bit better, but it wasn't too bad of a show. Anyway, with that, thank you for. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, leave a comment. Let me know how you feel. If you agree or disagree, or what I can do to try to get things better as far as my channel is concerned. Always ready, for some constructive criticism. So let me know. Leave it in the comments. All right. Thank you for watching. God bless. Deuces, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you.